Stop. The word cut through the air like a blade, freezing every hand mid-strike, every breath in every chest. Nora barely registered it through the haze of pain. Blood filled her mouth, warm and metallic, and her vision swam with dark spots that threatened to pull her under completely. She had stopped fighting 3 blows ago. There was no point. She was going to die here in the dirt behind the pack stables, beaten to death by warriors who saw her as less than nothing. And maybe that was always how it was supposed to end. I said stop. The voice came again, deeper this time, resonating with a power that made the ground itself seem to tremble. Nora felt, rather than saw, the warriors step back from her crumpled form. Through her swollen eye, she could just make out expensive black boots stepping into her line of sight. They stopped inches from her face. She tried to curl tighter into herself, to make her body as small as possible. But even that small movement sent lightning bolts of agony through her ribs. Who authorized this? The voice belonged to the boots, and there was something in it that made Nora's battered heart skip despite everything. It was not angry exactly. It was cold. Colder than anger. It was the voice of someone who expected absolute obedience and had never been denied it. Alpha King Demon. One of the warriors, Marcus, stammered the title like a prayer and a curse combined. We did not know you had arrived. The ceremony is not until sunset. We were just dealing with the stray. She tried to approach the ceremonial grounds. Omegas like her know better. She has always been trouble, always thinking she is better than what she is. Nora wanted to laugh at that, better than what she was. She had never thought she was anything at all. She had only been walking past the ceremonial grounds on her way to fetch water from the creek. She had not even looked at the elaborate preparations. But looking or not looking, it made no difference. The warriors needed someone to hurt today, someone to remind of their place, and she was always available for that purpose. Stray. The Alpha King repeated the word slowly, as if testing its weight. You call her Stray. There was a pause, long enough that Nora felt her consciousness starting to slip away again. She almost welcomed it. Oblivion would be better than this. Look at me, Omega. The command in those words bypassed her pain, bypassed her fear, bypassed everything. Nora's working eye opened. Wider, and she found herself staring up into a face that should not have been possible. The Alpha King was young, perhaps 30, with features carved from stone and eyes that burned gold in the afternoon light. His hair was black as midnight, pulled back from a face that was beautiful in the way a weapon was beautiful, perfectly made for its purpose. And he was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. What is your name? His voice had changed. Softer now, but no, less powerful. Nora's lips moved, but no sound came out at first. She swallowed blood and tried again. Nora. It came out as barely a whisper, broken and small. Nora Ashwood, Alpha King. She used the title because everyone used the title. Demon Blackthorn was not just an alpha. He was the alpha of alphas, the king of all territories, the wolf who had united the fractured packs under one rule through a combination of strategic brilliance and raw, terrifying power. Stories about him were told to scare children into obedience. He did not visit small, insignificant packs like Riverside. He certainly did not concern himself with beaten Omega strays. Except he was here, and he was concerning himself, and Nora could not understand why. Ashwood. He repeated her surname with something strange in his voice. Recognition, perhaps. But that could not be right. No one remembered her family anymore, except to spit on their memory. You are too young to have been involved in the treason. You were a child when it happened. It was not a question, but Nora nodded anyway, the movement sending fresh pain cascading through her skull. 5, she managed. I was 5 years old. Demon was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened to his full height, and when he spoke again, His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Marcus, you and your fellow warriors will report to your alpha and inform him that you have displeased me. Gravely. When I attend ceremonies in allied packs, I expect to see strength, discipline, and honor, not grown warriors beating a defenseless Omega to death for sport." Marcus made a strangled sound. "Alpha King, with respect, she is nothing. A traitor's whelp. She has no wolf. She is not even worth the food she steals from the pack stores." Nora closed her eye again. It was true. All of it was true. She had always known it was true. She is worth exactly what I say she is worth. Demon's words fell like hammer blows. And I say she is worth more than all of you combined. Remove yourselves from my sight before I decide that Riverside Pack has outlived its usefulness to the crown. The warriors fled. Nora heard their footsteps retreating in a panicked scramble, heard Marcus's harsh breathing fade into the distance. Then there was only silence and the sound of her own labored breaths. She waited for the Alpha King to leave too. He had made his point, asserted his dominance, reminded everyone who held the real power. There was no reason for him to stay. But he did not leave. Instead, she felt strong arms slide beneath her broken body, lifting her with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone rumored to have torn out the throat of a rival alpha with his bare hands. "I have you." His voice was close to her ear now, intimate in a way that made something deep in her chest ache with a longing she did not understand. "I have you, Nora Ashwood, and I will not let you fall." Then the world went dark, and for the first time in 18 years, Nora fell asleep feeling safe. When she woke, everything was wrong. The surface beneath her was soft, impossibly, obscenely soft. Nora had not slept on anything but hay and hard ground for so long that she had forgotten what a real bed felt like. Her body still screamed with pain, but it was muted now, wrapped in something warm and herb-scented that she recognized after a moment as a healing poultice. Her ribs were wrapped tight. Someone had cleaned the blood from her face and hands. Someone had cared for her like she was a person instead of a problem. She opened her eyes to find herself in a room that could have fit her entire stable quarters 10 times over. The walls were dark wood, the furniture heavy and expensive. Firelight danced in a massive hearth, and through tall windows she could see a landscape that was definitely not Riverside territory. "You are awake." Nora jerked at the sound of his voice, then immediately regretted it as her ribs protested. The Alpha. King was sitting in a chair near the fire, watching her with those unsettling golden eyes. He had removed his formal jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with the distinctive tattoos that denoted a crowned alpha. He looked relaxed, but Nora had survived 18 years in a hostile pack by learning to read dominance in its subtlest forms. He was coiled tight as a spring beneath that casual posture. "Where am I?" Her voice was rough. "Damaged from screaming, but it worked. Small mercies. My private suite in the Blackthorn Fortress. We are 3 hours from Riverside by car." He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, like Alpha's kings regularly kidnapped beaten Omegas and brought them to their fortresses. "I do not understand." Nora pushed herself up to sitting, ignoring the protest of every muscle in her body. "Why did you bring me here? What do you want from me?" Demon studied her for a long moment before answering. "I want to offer you a choice, Nora Ashwood. You can return to Riverside Pack, where you will continue to be treated as less than garbage until someone finally succeeds in killing you. Or you can stay here, under my protection, as my personal servant." Personal servant. The words should have terrified her. She knew what that could mean. Powerful wolves did not offer protection without expecting something in return. And an Omega with no wolf and no value had only one thing to offer. But when she looked into his eyes, she did not see lust. She saw something far more complicated. Something that looked almost like pain. Why would you do that? she had to ask. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. My family were traitors. Everyone knows that. Something flickered across his face, too fast for her to read. Perhaps I do not believe everything I am told. He stood, crossing to a table where someone had laid out a tray of food. Real food. Fresh bread, roasted meat. Fruits she had not tasted since she was a child. Her stomach cramped with hunger so intense it hurt worse than her injuries. Eat. He brought the tray to her, setting it on her lap. Then rest. We will discuss the details of your new position when you are healed. He moved toward the door, and Nora found herself speaking before she could stop herself. Why did you really save me? Demon paused with his hand on the door handle. For a moment she thought he would not answer. Then he looked back. At her, and the intensity in his gaze stole what little breath she had left. Because the moment I saw you, something inside me recognized something inside you, and I protect what is mine. Nora. Always. He left before she could ask what he meant by that. Nora stared at the closed door for a long time, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. 3 days passed in a blur of healing and confusion. Nora learned that the Blackthorn Fortress was less a fortress, and more a sprawling palace that housed the Alpha King's inner circle, his elite guards, and the political machinery that ran the entire Wolf Nation. She learned that her room, which she had thought impossibly luxurious, was actually one of the smaller guest suites. She learned that the wolves who worked here, from the kitchen staff to the warriors, moved with a confidence and purpose she had never seen in Riverside. No one cowered here. No one flinched when the Alpha King walked past. They respected him, certainly. Feared him, probably. But there was no cruelty in his leadership, no arbitrary punishment or random violence. It was like discovering that the entire world had been upside down her whole life, and she was only now seeing it right side up. On the 4th day, a woman came to her room carrying an armful of clothes. She was beautiful in the way high-ranking she-wolves always were, all sleek confidence and perfect grooming. Her wolf was close to the surface, visible in the inhuman grace of her movements. The Alpha King requests your presence in his study. The woman's voice was professionally neutral. I am Celeste, his executive assistant. I have brought you appropriate attire. Nora looked at the clothes laid out on her bed. They were simple but well made, far better than anything she had ever owned. Dark. Pants, a soft gray shirt, leather boots that looked like they would actually fit. I do not understand what he wants from me. The words came out before Nora could stop them. I am not trained for anything. I cannot read well. I have no skills beyond cleaning and hauling water. What use am I to someone like him? Celeste's expression softened slightly. The Alpha King does not keep useless things, girl. If he brought you here, he has a reason. Whether he chooses to share that reason is his business, not ours. Now dress. He does not like to be kept waiting. 20 minutes later, Nora stood outside a heavy oak door, her newly healed hand raised to knock. She hesitated. Everything in her screamed that she did not belong here, that she should run before whatever game Demon was playing revealed itself to be another form of torture. But she had nowhere to run to, so she knocked. Enter. His voice came from within, and Nora pushed open the door. The study was magnificent. Lined floor, to ceiling with books that represented more knowledge than Nora had ever imagined existed. Demon sat behind a massive desk covered in papers and maps, but he looked up as she entered, and something in his expression shifted. Warmed. Nora. Good. Close the door and sit. She did as instructed, perching on the edge of the chair across from him like a bird ready to take flight. He watched her for a moment, then pushed aside his papers and leaned forward, elbows on the desk. I am going to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. Can you do that? Nora nodded, her throat too tight for words. Your parents were not traitors. The words hit her like a physical blow. Nora jerked back in her seat, shaking her head. That is not true. Everyone knows what they did. They were planning to overthrow the Alpha. They were caught with weapons and plans. They confessed before they were executed. Demon's jaw tightened. They confessed under torture after their real crime was discovered. Do you know what that crime was, Nora? She could only stare at him, her world tilting sideways. They discovered that you were not their biological daughter. They discovered that you had been placed with them as an infant by a dying woman who begged them to keep you safe and hidden. A woman who wore the mark of the Silver Moon bloodline. The name meant nothing to Nora for a moment, and then it hit her like an avalanche. The Silver Moon bloodline. The ancient Alpha line that had ruled all the territories before the Great War, before the packs fractured and fought amongst themselves for generations. The bloodline that was supposed to be extinct, wiped out when the last Silver Moon Alpha and his entire family were slaughtered by rivals. That is impossible. Nora's voice was barely a whisper. The Silver Moons are gone. Everyone knows that. Demon rose from his chair and walked around the desk, leaning against it so he was closer to her. Close enough that she could smell him. Pine and smoke and something wild that made her pulse quicken. Not everyone. Your parents knew. The wolves who killed them knew. And now I know. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face with surprising gentleness. Your wolf is not absent, Nora. It is hidden. Suppressed by a combination of trauma, malnutrition, and probably some very old magic designed to keep you from being discovered. But it is there. I can sense it. Can you? Nora tried to feel what he was describing, and found only the familiar emptiness she had lived with her entire life. But there was something else now. Something that had started the moment Demon touched her in that clearing behind the stables. A warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire in the hearth. A pull toward him that defied logic or reason. I do not feel anything. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. You will. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Your wolf is waking up, Nora. And when she does, everything is going to change. He pulled back then, putting professional distance between them again, and Nora found herself mourning the loss of his touch. Until then, you will stay here as my personal assistant. You will learn to read and write properly. You will train with the pack, build your strength. And you will be protected absolutely from anyone who might want to use your bloodline for their own purposes. Nora's mind was reeling. I still do not understand why you are doing this. If what you say is true, if I really am Silver Moon, then I am a threat to your rule. The old families still talk about restoring the original bloodline. They would use me as a figurehead, a challenge to your authority. Demon smiled, and it was a wolf's smile. All teeth and danger. Let them try. I did not unite the territories by being easy to overthrow. But you are right that your existence is politically complicated, which is why no one outside this fortress can know the truth. Not yet. Not until you are strong enough to protect yourself and smart enough to navigate the games they will play. He moved back to his desk, picking up a leather journal and holding it out to her. This belonged to your mother, your birth mother. It was recovered from the ruins of the Silver Moon estate years after the massacre. I have had it in my possession for 5 years, waiting. Nora took the journal with trembling hands. The leather was worn soft with age, the pages yellowed. She opened it carefully and saw elegant handwriting covering the first page. She could only make out a few words, her reading skills too poor for this, but she recognized one. A name. Nora. She wrote about me. Her voice cracked. She wrote about her hope that you would survive, about the power that runs in your blood, about the wolf that would one day wake and shake the world. Demon's voice was gentle now. She loved you, Nora. Enough to give you away to keep you safe. Your adoptive parents loved you too. Die protecting your secret. Tears burned in Nora's eyes. The first she had allowed herself to cry in years. She clutched the journal to her chest and felt something inside her crack open. Not her wolf. Not yet. But something just as important. The possibility that she was not worthless. That she had never been worthless. That everything she had been told about herself had been a lie built on fear and politics and hatred. Thank you. The words were inadequate, but they were all she had. Demon's expression softened. You do not need to thank me, Nora. Just trust me. Can you do that? It should have been an impossible ask. Trust was not something Nora had any experience with. But looking into his golden eyes, feeling the strange pull that seemed to connect them, she found herself nodding. I can try. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his gaze. That is all I ask. The next weeks passed in a whirlwind of learning and growth that left Nora dizzy. She spent her mornings with a patient tutor named Margaret, who taught her to read and write properly, to understand mathematics and history and politics. She spent her afternoons training with the pack warriors, building muscle and stamina she had never had the nutrition or opportunity to develop before. And she spent her evenings with Demon, sometimes working in his study while he handled pack business, sometimes eating dinner in comfortable silence, sometimes just talking about everything and nothing. He told her about the Great War, about how his grandfather had been one of the generals who fought against the Silver Moon tyranny, as it was called then. How Demon himself had grown up believing that the Silver Moon Alphas had been monsters who needed to be destroyed for the good of all wolves. But the more I learned, the more I studied the actual history, rather than the propaganda, the more I realized that the truth was far more complicated. He said this one night as they sat by the fire in his private sitting room. The Silver Moons were not perfect, but they were not the villains they were made out to be. They were just powerful, and power makes people targets. Nora was curled in the chair across from him, her mother's journal open in her lap. She had been slowly working her way through it, and each page revealed more about a woman she wished desperately she had known. Did you always know you would look for me? She asked. Or was finding me an accident? Demon was quiet for a long moment. I knew someone from the Silver Moon line had survived. The woman who brought you to your parents told them she was not the last, that there was a child, hidden away, the Alpha's youngest daughter. I have been searching for 5 years. When I heard about the ceremony at Riverside, about the new Alpha taking power, I decided to attend. It is always useful to remind the smaller packs who really holds the power. I did not expect to find you there. He looked at her then, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I did not expect a lot of things about you, Nora. The air between them felt charged, heavy with something Nora could not quite name. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to understand the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was precious and terrifying in equal measure. But before she could find the words, a knock sounded at the door. Demon's expression shuddered. Enter. Celeste stepped inside, her face grave. Alpha King, we have a situation. The Riverside Alpha is here with an armed escort. He is demanding an audience. Demon rose smoothly to his feet. All business now. Demanding? There was ice in his voice. He demands nothing, but I will grant him an audience. Have him brought to the formal receiving room. And Celeste, make sure the hall is fully staffed with our warriors. I want him to understand exactly how unwelcome aggressive posturing is in my territory. Celeste nodded and left. Demon turned to Nora. Stay here. This does not concern you. But Nora was already standing, fear and anger warring in her chest. It does concern me. He is here because of me. Because you took me. Demon crossed to her in 2 long strides, taking her shoulders in his hands. He is here because he is a small-minded fool who thinks he can challenge me. You are under my protection, Nora. That means he cannot touch you. He cannot even speak to you without my permission. Do you understand? Nora wanted to believe him, but 18 years of fear did not disappear in a few weeks. He will say I stole something, or that I attacked someone. He will make up charges, and he will demand my return for trial. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. Demon's hands tightened on her shoulders. Not anymore. Not with me. Trust me, Nora. There was that word again. Trust. Nora took a shaky breath and nodded. I will stay here. Something like relief crossed his face. He raised one hand to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin in a gesture that felt achingly intimate. Good girl. I will deal with this quickly. He left, and Nora sank back into her chair, her heart pounding. She tried to return to her reading, but the words blurred on the page. All she could think about was Alpha Darren of Riverside, the man who had stood by while she was beaten and starved, who had laughed when warriors used her as a punching bag. He was here, in this building, demanding her return. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. 20 minutes passed like 20 hours. Nora gave up on reading and paced the room instead, her mind spinning through increasingly terrible scenarios. Finally, unable to bear it anymore, she slipped out of the sitting room and made her way through the corridors toward the formal receiving room. She knew she should not. Demon had told her to stay away, but she needed to know what was happening. She needed to hear what lies Darren was telling. The receiving room was at the end of a long hallway. Nora could hear raised voices before she even reached the door. She pressed herself against the wall just outside, hidden in the shadows, and listened. With all due respect, Alpha King, she is Riverside Pack. She was born in our territory, raised in our territory. By every law that governs our kind, she belongs to us. That was Darren, his voice oozing false courtesy. You took her without permission, without negotiation. That is technically an act of aggression. Demon's answering laugh was cold enough to freeze blood. Act of aggression. That is an interesting way to frame saving a pack member from being beaten to death by your warriors. Tell me, Alpha Darren, do you make a habit of allowing your wolves to commit murder in broad daylight? Or was that particular demonstration of pack discipline reserved especially for Nora Ashwood? There was a pause. Then Darren spoke again, and his voice had changed. Less diplomatic now, harder. The Ashwood girl is a special case. Her parents were traitors. She has always been difficult, always causing problems. My warriors were maintaining order. Nora's hands clenched into fists. Lies. All lies. But who would believe her word against an alpha's? I see. Demon's voice dropped even colder. So your defense for allowing 5 grown warriors to beat an unarmed Omega is that she deserved it because of something her parents allegedly did when she was a child. Is that correct? Another pause. Nora could imagine Darren realizing he had walked into a trap. I am not on trial here, Alpha King. I came to reclaim pack property and to discuss the insult of having that property stolen. If you wish to keep the girl, there can be negotiations, compensation. But taking her without even the courtesy of a conversation was unacceptable. Nora's stomach turned. Property. Compensation. She was being discussed like a piece of furniture. You misunderstand the situation, Alpha Darren. Demon's voice had gone very soft, very dangerous. I am not keeping Nora Ashwood because I wish to. I am keeping her because she is my mate. The words detonated like a bomb in the sudden silence. Nora stopped breathing. Mate. He had said mate. That was impossible. She would have felt it. Everyone always felt their mate bond. It was the most fundamental connection a wolf could experience. Except she did not have a wolf. Not yet. not that she could feel. Your mate. Darren sounded strangled. That is convenient. A mateless Omega suddenly becomes your mate the moment I come to reclaim her. Demon's answering growl was felt through the walls. Are you calling me a liar, Alpha Darren? Are you suggesting I would falsely claim a mate bond? Because if you are, we can settle this right now. I would be happy to demonstrate exactly how your death could look like an unfortunate training accident. The threat in his voice was so visceral that Nora felt her knees go weak. This was the Alpha. King the stories talked about. The wolf who had crushed rebellions and ended bloodlines. No. Darren backtracked quickly. No, of course not, Alpha King. If you say she is your mate, then she is your mate. I apologize for any offense. It is just unexpected. The girl has no wolf. I did not think it was possible for her to have a mate bond. When Demon spoke again, there was something almost smug in his tone. Her wolf is dormant, not absent. It is waking now, under my care. But that is none of your concern. Nora Ashwood is no longer Riverside Pack. She is Blackthorn Pack, and she is under my personal protection as my mate and future queen. If you or any of your wolves come near her again, I will consider it an act of war. Do I make myself clear? Queen. The word echoed in Nora's head. He had called her his future queen. Crystal clear, Alpha King. I will inform the pack of her new status, and may I offer congratulations on finding your mate. The words were forced out through what sounded like gritted teeth. You may leave. Now. Nora heard footsteps, heard the doors to the receiving room open. She should have run, should have hidden, but her feet would not move. And then Darren was there in the hallway, flanked by 2 large warriors, walking directly toward her. Their eyes met. For a moment, something like triumph flashed in Darren's expression. Then he was speaking, his voice loud enough to carry back into the receiving room. Well, the little stray. I hope you are happy with yourself, Nora. Using false mate bonds to escape the consequences of your family's crimes. Clever. I did not think you had it in you. Nora opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Because suddenly Demon was there, moving faster than should have been possible, putting himself physically between her and Darren. I believe I told you to leave, Alpha Darren. The words were barely above a whisper, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. And yet you stopped to harass my mate in my own halls. That is twice now you have disrespected me in the span of 10 minutes. I wonder if you are simply stupid, or if you have a death wish. Darren's face went pale. I meant no disrespect. I was simply surprised to see her here, listening at doors like the spy her parents trained her to be. Demon moved then, so fast it was a blur. One moment he was standing still, the next his hand was around Darren's throat, lifting the other Alpha clear off his feet and slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack the stone. Darren's warriors moved to intervene, but Blackthorn warriors materialized from everywhere, weapons drawn, surrounding them in a circle of deadly intent. Listen very carefully. Demon's voice was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it more terrifying. That woman is everything. She is my mate. She will be my queen. And if you ever speak about her with anything less than absolute respect again, I will rip out your throat and mount your head on a spike outside my gates as a reminder to every other small-minded Alpha who thinks they can disrespect what is mine. Do you understand? Darren managed a strangled nod. Demon held him for a moment longer, then dropped him. Darren collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Get out of my territory. You have 1 hour. If you are still within my borders after that, I will hunt you down personally. Demon did not wait to see if Darren obeyed. He simply turned to Nora, his expression shifting instantly from deadly to concerned. Are you all right? Nora could only stare at him. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You said I was your mate. Her voice came out small, confused. You told him we had a mate bond. Demon glanced at the warriors still surrounding them, then took her arm gently. Not here. Come with me. He led her back to his private quarters, past curious eyes and knowing looks, through doors that closed out the rest of the world. Only when they were alone in his sitting room did he release her arm and step back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that looked almost nervous. Nora had never seen him nervous. You lied to him. She said it flatly, trying to understand. You lied about the mate bond to protect me. Demon turned to face her, and there was something raw in his expression. Something vulnerable. I did not lie, Nora. The words hung in the air between them. Nora shook her head. That is impossible. I would feel it. Even without my wolf, I would feel something. Demon crossed to her slowly, like she was a wild thing that might bolt. What do you feel when I am near you? Tell me honestly. Nora opened her mouth to say nothing, to deny it, but the lie would not come. Warm, she whispered instead. I feel warm, like there is something in my chest that is trying to reach out to you. Like being near you is the only time I can breathe properly. His eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, they were blazing. That is the bond, Nora. Muted because your wolf is still dormant, but it is there. I felt it the moment I saw you. I have felt it every second since. And I have been waiting for you to feel it too. Nora's mind was reeling. Why did you not tell me? Demon's laugh was bitter. Because you have been hurt and used your entire life. Because you have no reason to trust anyone, least of all a powerful alpha who swept in and took you away from everything you knew. I wanted you to have time to heal, to grow stronger, to choose to stay here because you wanted to, not because biology told you to. He took another step closer, and Nora could feel the heat radiating off him. I wanted you to know your own worth before you knew we were mates, because you are worth everything, Nora, with or without me, with or without your wolf, with or without your bloodline. You are worth everything. The words broke something inside her, the last wall she had been, holding up against hope, against belief, against the terrifying possibility that maybe she could have something good in her life. I feel it. The confession tore out of her. I feel you. All the time. I thought I was going crazy. I thought it was just because you saved me, because you were the first person to ever be kind to me. But it is more than that. Is it not? Demon's hands came up to cup her face, and the touch sent electricity racing through her veins. It is everything. You are my mate, Nora Ashwood, my one true mate, the other half of my soul, and I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that you deserve to be loved. Then he kissed her. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. It was not like the rough, demanding kisses she had seen warriors steal from Omega girls behind the pack house. It was gentle and fierce at the same time, claiming and worshipping in equal measure. Demon kissed her like she was precious, like she was powerful, like she was exactly what he had been searching for his entire life. And something inside Nora, something that had been sleeping cold and quiet in the darkest part of her soul, stirred, opened one eye, stretched, her wolf. Nora gasped against Demon's mouth, and he pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Do you feel her? His voice was rough with emotion. Your wolf. Do you feel her waking? Nora pressed a hand to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Oh gods. Yes. She is there. She has always been there. The bond between them flared suddenly, a golden thread that connected her heart to his, so bright and strong it took her breath away. She could feel his emotions now, the love, fierce and unconditional, the protectiveness that bordered on violent, the pride he felt watching her grow stronger each day, the fear that she might reject him, might choose to leave. I am not leaving. She said it fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt. I am staying. Right here. With you. My mate. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after years of darkness. My mate. He repeated, and kissed her again. This time when their lips met, Nora's wolf rose fully to meet his, and the bond between them completed with a snap that shook them both to their cores. In that moment, Nora felt everything she had been missing her entire life. The strength of her wolf, proud and powerful and patient. The love of her mate, unwavering and absolute. The connection to something larger than herself. A destiny that had been waiting for her to be ready to claim it. She was Nora Ashwood, daughter of the Silver Moon bloodline, mate to the Alpha King, and she was done being afraid. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change and challenge. Once Nora's wolf had fully awakened, the transformation was dramatic. She was stronger, faster, more confident. Her senses sharpened to the point where she could track individual scents across the entire fortress. And her power, when it finally manifested fully, was unlike anything the pack had seen in generations. She had inherited the Silver Moon gift, the ability to command other wolves through sheer force of will, to calm raging beasts with a touch, to heal injuries with focused intent. She was not just an alpha. She was something more. Something the old texts called a Luna Prime, a mate whose power could rival even the king's. Demon watched her come into her own with a mixture of pride and possessive satisfaction that made her heart flutter every time. He trained with her personally, pushing her to master her abilities, to understand the political landscape she would soon have to navigate as his queen. And at night, when the work was done and they were alone in their rooms, he worshipped her like she was a goddess made flesh. But not everyone was happy about the development. 3 months after Nora's wolf had awakened, Celeste came to her in the training yard with a grim expression. We have a problem. Several of the old bloodline alphas are calling for a summit. They want to meet the Silver Moon heir. They want to evaluate whether you are worthy of the title of queen. Nora lowered her practice sword, breathing hard from the workout. Let me guess. They are hoping I am not. They are hoping I am just some weak Omega who got lucky. Celeste's smile was sharp. Actually, I think they are hoping you are exactly what you are. Powerful, legitimate, a potential rival. To Demon's authority. They want to use you as a wedge, to drive a split between the new power and the old bloodlines. If they can convince you that you deserve to rule in your own right, that Demon is just another usurper keeping you from your birthright, they can fracture the unity he has spent years building. Nora felt her wolf growl low in her chest. They are going to be disappointed. Celeste raised an eyebrow. You are that certain? Nora looked across the training yard to where Demon was working with a group of young warriors, correcting their forms, offering encouragement. She felt the bond between them, strong and steady, and absolutely certain. Demon did not save me because of my bloodline. He did not even know what I would become when he pulled me out of that dirt and brought me here. He saved me because I was his mate, and because I was being hurt, and because that is who he is. A male who protects what is his and fights for what is right. I am not going to let anyone use me against him. Celeste's smile turned genuine. Good. Because the summit is in 2 days, and it is going to be brutal. The old guard does not like change, and you represent more change than they have seen in a century. Nora squared her shoulders. Then I guess it is time to show them that change is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. The summit was held in neutral territory, in the ancient gathering hall where alphas had met to settle disputes for hundreds of years. Nora walked in beside Demon, dressed in formal attire that marked her as both warrior and royalty. Her hair was pulled back in a severe braid, her mother's journal tucked against her heart in an inside pocket. The Silver Moon crest, which she now had the right to wear, gleamed silver at her throat. The hall was packed with alphas from every major bloodline, their eyes tracking her every movement with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and calculation. Nora met their gazes steadily, her wolf a calm, powerful presence just beneath her skin. Elder Marcus, the oldest of the traditional alphas, stood as they approached. Alpha King Demon, and this must be the girl who claims to be the lost Silver Moon heir. The emphasis on claims was deliberate and insulting. Demon's hand tightened on Nora's back, but she stepped forward before he could respond. I do not claim anything, Elder Marcus. I simply am. My blood carries the Silver Moon legacy whether I want it to or not. Whether you believe it or not. Whether it is convenient for your politics or not. A murmur ran through the assembled alphas. Elder Marcus's eyes narrowed. Strong words from one so young. Tell me, girl, do you understand what it means to carry that legacy? The Silver Moons ruled with absolute power. They crushed dissent. They made decisions that affected entire territories without consultation. Is that the kind of rule you aspire to? Nora smiled, and she felt her wolf's satisfaction in the expression. The Silver Moons ruled during a time of chaos and war. They did what was necessary to prevent the complete destruction of our kind. But that time is over. We have a new kind of leadership now. One built on unity and strength rather than domination and fear. I have no interest in overthrowing the Alpha King. I have every interest in standing beside him and helping him build something better than what came before. She felt Demon's pride through the bond, warm and fierce. But make no mistake. Her voice dropped, taking on the edge of command that was her birthright. I will not be used as a pawn in your political games. I will not be a figurehead for dissatisfied alphas who miss the old ways. I am Demon's mate, his queen, and anyone who tries to drive a wedge between us will discover exactly why the Silver Moon line was feared. Her power flared out as she spoke, washing over the assembled alphas like a wave. Several of them gasped, their wolves forcing them to lower their eyes in automatic submission. Even Elder Marcus took a step back, shock written clearly on his face. Impossible, he breathed. That kind of power has not been seen since the last Luna Prime died in the Great War. Demon moved to stand beside Nora, his own power rising to meet and complement hers. Together, they were a force of nature. My mate is exactly what our kind needs. His voice carried to every corner of the hall. Not a return to the past, but a bridge between old and new. The Silver Moon legacy tempered by modern wisdom, ancient power in service of a better future. Anyone who cannot accept that is welcome to challenge me for the crown. Here. Now. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Elder Marcus bowed his head. I see no need for challenges, Alpha King. You have chosen well. If Queen Nora, is truly as you say, then perhaps there is hope for us all. One by one, the other alphas followed suit, bowing to acknowledge Nora's position and power. It was not complete acceptance. There would still be challenges, still be those who schemed and plotted. But it was a beginning. As they left the hall hours later, after endless rounds of political discussion and careful alliance building, Nora felt exhausted but triumphant. You were magnificent. Demon's voice was low, intimate, meant only for her ears. They expected a frightened Omega. They got a queen. Nora leaned into him, letting his strength support her. I had a good teacher, and a better mate. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. Come, let us go home. I want to celebrate this victory properly. The heat in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Is that a royal command, Alpha King? His answering growl was pure satisfaction. It is a mate's request, but I am willing to make it a command if that is what my queen prefers. Nora laughed, the sound free and genuine, in a way it never would have been 6 months ago. 6 months ago, she had been a broken Omega waiting to die. In the dirt. Now she was a queen standing beside her king, powerful and loved and whole. "Take me home, demon," she said softly. "Take me home and show me exactly how a king celebrates." He swept her into his arms, ignoring the amused looks from his guards, and carried her to the car that would take them back to Blackthorn territory. And as they drove through the night, Nora looked at her mate's profile in the dim light and felt her wolf's contentment echo through their bond. This was what destiny felt like. This was what home felt like. This was what love felt like. And she was never, ever letting it go. 6 months later, Nora stood in the grand ballroom of the Blackthorn Fortress, dressed in a gown of silver and midnight blue, the silver moon crest blazing at her throat alongside the Blackthorn crown. Around her, wolves from every territory gathered to witness her official coronation as queen. It was a formality, really. She had been acting as queen for months, had proven herself in combat and politics and leadership. But Demon had insisted on the ceremony, had wanted the entire wolf nation to see her crowned, to witness the moment when the lost Silver Moon heir claimed her rightful place. As the crown was placed on her head, as the assembled alphas bent their knees in acknowledgement, Nora caught Demon's eye across the room. The love and pride in his gaze was so intense it took her breath away. Later, when the ceremony was over and they finally had a moment alone, he pulled her into his arms and just held her. "I am so proud of you." His voice was rough with emotion. "Of everything you have become, everything you have overcome." Nora pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "I could not have done any of it without you. You saved me, Demon. In every way a person can be saved." He cupped her face in his hands. "You saved yourself, Nora. You chose to be strong. You chose to fight. You chose to become the queen you were always meant to be. I just gave you the space to do it." She kissed him then, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and fierce joy into it. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I have something to tell you," Nora said softly. Demon stilled, his eyes searching her face. "What is it?" Nora took his hand and placed it over her stomach. "We are going to have a pup, an heir to both bloodlines, a symbol of everything we have built together." For a moment, Demon just stared at her, frozen. Then his face broke into the most beautiful smile she had ever seen. "A pup," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Our pup." He dropped to his knees, pressing his face against her stomach, his arms wrapping around her waist. Nora ran her fingers through his hair and let her own tears fall freely. They were happy tears this time, tears of joy and hope, and the absolute certainty that no matter what challenges came, they would face them together. Because she was no longer the broken Omega from Riverside. She was Nora Ashwood Blackthorn, queen of all wolves, mate to the Alpha King, carrier of the Silver Moon legacy and the promise of a better future. And her story, their story, was just beginning. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming?